let's just say that I had a bit of a moment, a bit of a, not quite a blinding flash, but just a bit of a revelation about, where I'd gotten to in life. And to understand this moment, I kind of had to go back in time a little bit to put it in perspective. I've been a journalist since 1987, which is, over 35 years. But in my first year as a journalist, when I was a journalistic cadet, in fact, I've probably only been there 6 months. I was at work. I was a couple of rooms away from the newsroom, standing at the fax machine, which in those days you ended up doing quite a bit. And I'm standing at the fax machine, and whilst I'm standing there, I can overhear a conversation that's going on in the newsroom, but which they think I can't hear. And this conversation is about me. And the gist of the conversation, or at least the first half of it, was that I wasn't, I was a first year cadet. I wasn't going to make it. And the reason I wasn't going to make it is because I wasn't good at X, Y, and Z, which I would have agreed with wholeheartedly. As this conversation progressed, the chief sub-editor of that newspaper, who smoked clove cigarettes and had a bushy beard and kind of mumbled his way around, but was, ultra wise kind of guy. He piped up and he said, and his nickname for me was McComas. He said, "I reckon McComas, there's a guy at X newspaper who was very famous at the time. I reckon, he is a bit like this guy who's famous and who made it as a really good journalist. Young McComas reminds me a bit of him. Yes, he can't do X, Y, and Z, but he wrote it, in his 6 months on this paper. There's one piece that he showed something that was a bit out of the ordinary." And he mentioned the piece, and I knew what it was that was different about that piece. And he said, "This guy is not going to be an in-your-face journalist. This guy's going to be an observer. That's his thing, and he knows how to translate those observations onto the page." I think that I mention that history because I've known through the course of my career that when people talk about 1%ers, they usually talk about the 1% of things that you do on top of all your other strengths that help separate the best from the very best. I've always kind of looked at my skill set as I only have the 1%. I don't have all the other strengths. I only have the 1%. And I have to tend that 1% for all my life. That is it. I only have the 1%. I need to make that 1% as brilliant as it can be, knowing that it's never going to be overly brilliant because I don't have all the other things. I mention this because fast forward 30 plus years from that, or 30 odd years from that discussion, and I've gotten myself into a position where, I've written various books, and I've published, or I'm about to publish, the novel that I'd worked on for decades, and I've kind of made something of a name for what I do. And I sat down, and here's the moment where the revelation is revealed. I sat down with a guy, and he explained a career opportunity that was the kind of opportunity that you hope that you're working towards. And as he explained the full extent of this opportunity that he was going to present to me, that was going to elevate my career significantly, as he explained it, the feeling inside of me was not excitement or pride, or the feeling was anxiety. I knew that as great as this opportunity was, that I wouldn't be able to do it. Which isn't the revelation. The revelation is this: I looked at him and said, why? This was my response after pausing and looking out the window. I turned to him and I said, why are you offering this to me? This is the sort of thing that I report on. This isn't the sort of thing that I do. And he looked at me and he said, but you're the talent. And I said, I'm the talent. No, I'm the reporter. And he said, no, at your stage of your career, you're the talent. And I thought, I'm not the talent. A. B. I'm not the talent. C. If I'm the talent, I'm running 1,000,000 miles away. Now, it wasn't like the day after this, because life's not like that. You know, there's always a source of denial, but you don't necessarily know when the source is going to, where it's going to deliver you to. And so, you know, I didn't go, well, I don't want to be the talent, so I need to change my career. But at some point after that, after realizing that I'd kind of got to the point where some people, and I understand it's only this one guy and that's not the general view, but some people thought I had crossed because I had achieved certain things, which were not big things and no big deals, but because I'd kind of, you know, just been around for a long time, maybe it's just a last person standing thing, but because I've been around for a long time, that I was sometimes seen as the talent. And I noticed that, you know, I have reported on wine for a long time. I'd noticed that I'd go to wineries, and once upon a time I would just, you know, walk around with the winemaker and observe what they're doing. That now when I go to a winery, they put a wine in my hand and look at me and go, what do you think? It's like my view kind of mattered. I was no longer just observing. And so as this kind of I'm the talent thing was affecting my thinking, at some point I picked up a camera. And I picked up a camera and I took a picture of a person. I took what could loosely be described as a portrait. And I instantly felt like that the camera between me and the person meant that you know, either the person was the talent or the camera was the talent, but I was never going to be the talent. And I think I was incredibly seduced by that notion, and not just seduced, but I knew from that moment on that I had to take pictures of people. I have a feeling that I just made that a whole lot more complicated than it needed to be. I'm an observer, I like to photograph, I love the fact that the focus is not on me, and I love the fact that the photograph at the end is, you know, you'll come up with something special. That's it. And it's fun, we're enjoyable. You know, the process of trying to create something is enjoyable. Turn to me. Blue steel. Just think blue steel.